Hello, and thanks for joining me again, looking into Synapse Analytics in Azure, and looking at all the different components and how they work together. So today is an interesting one in that we're looking at Power BI. And I do have a slight apology to make, because when we started, I started talking about this picture. So I was like, here's all the different interesting bits of Synapse Analytics, and one or two people, rightly so, said, where's Power BI? Why aren't you talking about Power BI here? And my response at the time was, well, it's not really part of Synapse Analytics. It's more something that just can query it. Synapse is a source that Power BI can use. And I was wrong. So, hands up, it's actually a lot more integrated than I first thought. So what we can do is hook up datasets and build reports and see those directly within the Synapse workspace, which is pretty cool. So I'll take you through how that works, what that looks like. I'll compare and contrast it to Databricks over some similar data, and we'll see how it all hangs together. So let's take a look. If you like the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and feel free to leave some comments about other things you'd like us to talk about, and we'll go from there. Okay, right, back over here to get rid of that. And let's go and talk about Synapse. Okay, so this is our Synapse Studio. Got things set up, and there's a few bits and pieces in here. So firstly, I did have a notebook just to do this. So I've got two bits of Parquet sitting in my lake, classic NYC taxi data. I've got one, which is the pure taxi data, and I made a date dimension. Now, if you were watching other videos last week from the Spark series, I was looking at dynamic partition pruning. So I've got this data held in two different ways. One is Parquet, one is Delta, and we'll come to that later. For now, we're looking at the Parquet data. So in Synapse, created that. I've created a database called NYC. I've registered these two tables, and I've ran that script. So under data, we've got this. So we've got a Spark database. We've got our two tables registered, and we can see the column metadata under there. So that's why I'm using Parquet currently, is because Delta's coming, but it's not in there yet. So if I register a table in Spark, and it's a Parquet file, then it does the full metadata capturing, so I can see what's going on there. And the reason I've done that is because I want that visible to me on the SQL side. So I can go into develop, I can create a new SQL script, and I can say I want to use, and I can see NYC in my list. So that means it's replicated over. So despite the fact that NYC is a Spark database, SQL On Demand automatically creates a replicated copy of any of the Hive databases that we've got inside Spark. So I can go in here, I can do select star from, let's do dbo.date, just for simplicity. I need to be in my NYC database. And that's not control enter, that is a 5, and it's case sensitive. Okay, there we go. So it's gone off, finding that date table. I've got some data. I mean, really real simple. We know that works. We've seen that before. So the question is, how do we then get this into Power BI? So I've shown you before that you can just use the SQL On Demand endpoint and hook that up to Power BI and use it as a data source. That's interesting, but that's not the cool thing. So if we go over to Manage in Synapse, we've got linked services. So I can create, as if I was connecting a new data source to pull data in, I can connect to Power BI here. And, it gives me that hint, nice and big at the top. Use Power BI. This connects to Power BI. So I've got that option. I can also just do it down here and connect to Power BI. Either way, goes off. And this is connecting to a workspace. So this isn't just saying connect to my entire Power BI account. This wants a specific workspace. So let's go and create one quickly. So I've got Power BI up here. This is just me logged in as me. I'm going to go create workspace. Let's call this Synapse. So all we need to do, create that workspace that now exists in Power BI. So I can go in here, hit back, just to refresh that workspace list. And I should have Synapse. There we go. Okay, so I now have a workspace. Give this a linked service name. So it's going to be called linked service Power BI, sure. And that's what I can do. Now, when I was first trying to do this, I was back in my other Azure subscription. And that's in a different tenant to my normal Power BI account. And that meant I didn't get any workspaces. So this is looking in the same tenant. So it takes who I am logged in as, currently browsing the Azure portal, and it tries to say, in the tenant, in the directory I'm logged into, with the user I'm currently logged in as, what can I see in terms of Power BI? So if you have Power BI set up in a different tenant to Azure, you're not going to see anything here, and this is not going to work. So I don't know how easy that is to fix if you have that problem, but that's kind of a known problem. Azure and Power BI don't play nice if you've got them in different tenants. So be careful about that. For now, it's the same thing. It's all in the same place. So I'm going to align that, create that. There we go. So that's now created me a linked service. And then if I go over to the Develop tab, I've now got this. I can now see Power BI as one of the things I have. So I've got SQL scripts, notebooks, and now Power BI as things in my Develop area. So I can go and have a look in there, and I can see datasets and reports. Now, there's nothing in there currently. So, we need to design some, we need to build some datasets and tell Power BI how to talk to all of this Synapse stuff. Now, the telling thing is that this is read-only view of your datasets. So you can't create new datasets directly within Synapse. That's a little bit disappointing for me, because what I would like, I don't need the full data modeling experience. I get that, that's a separate thing. I'd like it just to automatically register the datasets that it has. It knows the datasets that are here. Why do I need to do a load of stuff to do it? But either way, I can click New Power BI Dataset. That then says you're going to need Power BI Desktop as a hint. Click Start. And then it gives me a choice of two of my SQL databases. It says, what are you trying to expose to Power BI? We'll shortcut it. We'll get you some of the way there. Do you want to do it? And I've got a SQL pool, and I've got a ad hoc queries, which is a database I created through SQL pool on demand. But I don't have the replicated one. I don't have my NYC database. So I just go back over into the SQL side. So my actual SQL scripts can see the default Spark workspace. They can see the NYC replicated tables and ad hoc and SQL Warehouse. So you can see it's only letting me see SQL pools and SQL on demand. It's not letting me see the SQL, the Spark replicated tables, which is fine. Okay, I get it. But it just means there's some manual steps that we need to do. So if we decided to create that, so ad hoc queries, click next, all this is doing is making a Power BI dataset file. So I can click that, download it, open it inside Power BI Desktop, and start going. But that's not really good for me, because what I need is that replicated Hive table. I want to be able to query that NYC. So we're going to have to do it manually, and then we'll come back to report. So we need some data before we can do anything. So let's do it the way we've done it before. We've got my SQL endpoint. Dive into Power BI. I want to do an Azure SQL database, because that's essentially what the SQL on demand protocol is using. So SQL database, it's going to ask me for server. I can say connect to my NYC database. It's going to force it to go to that replicated database. Use direct query, and they can tell it what to do. It's going to try and connect, make sure it can. There we go. So I can see I've got my date table, I've got my taxi table. So I'm just going to load those in. And again, we've seen this before. This isn't the super interesting part. So let's get that in. When it's done it, I'll make a quick relationship, and then we'll actually see what we can do. Okay, so in there, I know pickup day goes to calendar day. That's fine. It needs to query the data. Again, direct query. It's a bit chatty. It's going back and forwards, checking the data, making sure this is right. Okay, so it's got my two columns. Click OK. Create a relationship. And now I can actually go and build some reports. So I could say I want my calendar month, and I want my fair amount, bring them together, and then there we can go. I've now got some kind of report. I want to see it as columns, and that'll take a moment to think about it. So that's all local currently. So this is my local client machine going off, querying that SQL on-demand endpoint and bringing data back to me. It could take a moment to do that. That's okay, but I need to publish this. I need to get this, the data model, that really simple, just two table data model, and send it off to my Power BI workspace before Synapse can see it. Okay, so there we go. So I've got a super quick query. Let's get this out. I want to publish it. So this is going to be my Synapse one. Save that. It'll ask me what workspace I want to send it to. So obviously I need to send it to that new Synapse one. Select, and then that'll deploy it. So this is now taking that data model definition, it's taking the report definition, going to deploy them as two separate objects into Power BI. So when this is done, I should be able to go to Power BI and see those objects. So under Synapse, I can go and say, what's in here? Don't have anything currently. There we go. So I've now got those two objects I've just created locally. I deployed to Power BI. Again, nothing special there. That's the same way Power BI always works. If I go back over to Synapse, and we have a look at what's in here, I can go and hit refresh. I can now see a report, and if I click on my datasets, I can actually see it up there. So Power BI datasets is now aware that I have this Synapse dataset. So I can't change it, I can't do anything with it, but I do have this funky little button saying create a new report. And if I click that, this is where it's actually doing things inside Synapse. So I have the report designer built in inside the Synapse Studio. I can go in, I can do that same kind of thing. I can say I want to know all my different months exactly the same way. I want my fair amount. So I can build that same report, and that just works directly. It is the same kind of web portal browser that we're using to build the Power BI reports baked in inside Synapse. Now, I don't have dashboards. I don't have some of the funkier stuff. I don't have the full dataset configuration. It's a very cut down version. It's kind of like the nice entry-level surface layer of Power BI, but it's available within the Synapse workspace. So I can go and I need someone to create those data sources for me, and then I can go in and work with it. Now, you see that it has called it something quite funky. So I've got new report 86E1. Now, if I want to save that, I've got this Save As button. So I can click that. What do I want to call that? I want to call it ASA. Gonna hit save. Actually goes and saves it. At this point, it's saved. So it's kind of annoying that it has save as copy. When it's not save as copy, it's just actually save it. Just to show you that example, if I go and create a new report and I get a new randomly generated one. So if I go back to my Power BI workspace, and if I just refresh that, so in a second we'll see, there we go. So my ASA report has come through. The other report won't come through. So that report isn't saved. It's not committed. That's not going to sync through to my Power BI workspace until I do that file save as. Essentially, yes, I want to actually make that something when we're over here. When we're in the reports that already exist, we've got file save and we've got the little save button over here. And that just works. That just says, okay, make my changes and actually apply it, sync that back to the Power BI workspace. And that's a bit more normal. So I don't know why we've got this save as a separate copy thing. It just saves it. That's how you commit it. So it's not at all related to the publish buttons, which is, again, a little bit weird. So I can be creating new reports. If I hit publish, I get SQL scripts. I don't get Power BI objects. So kind of the integration, it's in there, but it's not fully part of the whole Synapse experience. Okay, so I've got a report that's bringing back some data. That's going off SQL on demand. That's charging me each time I go and change it. So every time I tweak it, every time I filter it, every time I refresh it, it's going back, querying the data and bringing it back again. And I want to do a quick comparison and just say, this is Databricks side. So I have a Spark cluster currently turned on. I can go and query the data. I can do that similar kind of thing. And I wanted just to show that quick comparison of this is how we do it in Databricks versus this is how we do it in Power BI. Synapse. So I need to get the connection details from my Spark cluster. So over here, I've got back in Power BI desktop. So I need to, again, create a data source, which means I need to do it locally and deploy it. So I can say I want to get some data. And then this is where the integration is not fantastic for Databricks. I need to select Spark and say I'm going to connect to a Spark server. Not Azure HD Insight. It has to be a local Spark server. Going to ask me how I want to connect. So we're going to be a HTTP connection. And I need to get some details. I need to tell Databricks how to connect. So if I go down here, I can go into my JDBC options, and then I can see some details about how to actually connect. So I've got my server host name, and I've got this thing called a SQL path. So I need both of those, and it actually builds it up for you over here. So I'm going to take all of that, bring it over here, I'm going to say this is how you connect. Whoops, got double connect, column. Okay, so it's got my workspace location. It's got my Databricks.net, it's got my port. I then don't need any of that stuff. I need up until the SQL. Yes, that HTTP path. And then the cluster ID, I need to replace with 0. Now that is super clunky. It's like a dark art that I need to know how I build out this, this URL, right? But then that's direct query, and click OK. And then that should go connect through. Now, I've actually connected here before, so it's remembered my credentials. Normally, it'll ask for your username and password, and your username has to be token, and then I'd need to go and generate a Databricks token. So in that, I've got my username, I need to go to user settings, generate a new token. I need to say this is going to be a lifetime of 1, and this is going to be it's going to be an example. I'm going to generate a token, and there we go. That's my password. So my username is just the word token. That is my password. And then if I put that in, that's going to go through and work. I can delete that so you guys can't back in and connect as me. And there we go. So now I've got Spark set up. And again, I've got my 2 different versions. So I've got the one which is my Parquet connection, I've got my one which is Delta. So I bring it in on the Delta side. We can do the same thing. So I'll have essentially two concurrent data models. Yes, I want to combine data sources. And then we can do a little comparison and say, well, how does this actually change between the two? Okay, so that's gone in. So we should have my data model. So I've now got date and taxi is on my SQL on demand side. My Delta Lake date and Delta Lake NYC are on my Databricks side. And I can do that same thing. I can say pickup day joins to calendar day, go through, take a moment again. This is querying my Spark server now and saying, give me back some sample data, go and show it to me. Give that a second. There we go. So it does the same stuff. Does that not have any days in my date table? There we go. Okay, so create that. I'm going to validate that relationship. And then we can actually do a quick comparison. We can say, well, this is running on a Spark cluster with 3 nodes versus on a SQL on demand cluster that we don't scale. We can get an idea of how speed works between the two. So if I can go back and do the same thing. So I can say I would like so it's my month, and I want my fair amount. And then I want to see that just as a column chart. And I can do it next to each other. And again, so that's a similar kind of thing that what we're doing. So kind of just saying, do the same thing. One working SQL on demand, one working using Delta Lake via Databricks. And actually, let's just create a quick slicer. So I want a slicer that's going to be my my normal calendar month, and then I want a separate slicer that's going to be my Delta Lake calendar month. And then I'm going to save this and redeploy it. So then we'll get this whole stuff replicated in Synapse, and we'll get kind of an idea about how that's working. Okay, so that's fine. That's happy. Save. Publish it. Still going to my Synapse workspace. Going to replace a load of stuff. And that's going to go and push it out. Think about it. There we go. Okay, right. So finally, back in Synapse, we should be able to see that now. So that the same data set has those things in it. We've got our new reports. So the report I edited was my straight ASA one, the Synapse one. So that should have both. Okay, there we go. Okay, so it's saying it can't see it. So again, that's that thing when if you've deployed something to Power BI, occasionally you have to go and refresh how that data set's working. So I've got my Synapse data set. So I need to go into my connections. So let's just do my settings. So this might actually have an error on my data source credentials. So just to see, is it actually working? Yeah, so that's not actually how it connects to Spark. So it should be that token. And I'm going to need to generate that token over here in my settings. This is for Power BI to connect. Generate my token up. And then go in and paste it in. So let's see if that works. That seems happier. Don't want to save that right now. And then let's see if we can go back to that report. Okay, so that's going to go through. Again, try and use direct query to refresh it. So we've got the little wheels going through, refreshing my stuff. And what's going to be interesting is if I try and filter them about the same time, we can kind of see about how that refresh speed's working between the two. Okay, so we've had one refresh. SQL on demand one's still thinking about it. That may also need some updated things. No, okay, cool. Okay, so that has worked. A little bit of refresh. But if we just go and try and say, what happens if we filter them on similar times? So we've got, I should grab one of my 2009 ones. So 2019-02, try and get that on both sides. So it's 2019-02 and 2019-02. So slices only relate to the charts above them. They're not cross-filtering. And we should get a rough idea about the speed. That's about the same. So actually that was pretty good in terms of getting them to go off and refresh. So a Spark cluster with 3 nodes working at about the same speed as the SQL on demand. Now, I'm actually a little surprised by that. Yeah, so they're about right. So the interesting thing is over on the Databricks side, if I just check out my cluster, we can say, what was the last thing that ran? We can go and grab that job. So we can see it was a SQL query that came in. I can say, what was my related SQL query? And I get this whole thing again of, this is doing a dynamic query. So this is actually sort of saying, it's filtering down my date table, dynamically doing a partition filter on my delta table. And I don't know how that is working on the other side. I don't know how effective that is when it's working on the Spark side. So the interesting thing with the SQL on demand is if I just quickly do another refresh with a different report now, if I just do another refresh, then actually we should see, if we quickly get down to the monitor tab in Synapse into SQL requests, we can see that there's a SQL request running. So we can go and see there is something happening. We can see the SQL query that has been passed from Power BI into SQL on demand. Now this is only available while the query is running. And there's a note saying history is coming soon and we'll be able to actually see what it's doing. But I don't know currently as to, is that hitting the partition in SQL on demand? So it could be, one, it's brute force, it's scaling it out, it's sucking back all of the 84 million rows, filtering it in memory, but because SQL on demand scales itself, it's just throwing more grunt at it, and so it's doing it, and it's making it return in about the same speed as the more efficient Databricks query that's doing partition pruning. Or is it actually realizing that I'm joining based on something that is going to hit the partition key, and so it's effectively partition pruning, so it's reading less data? And I don't know, and I can't tell. So that's going to be the interesting thing, because if it's going the brute force route, then it's reading more data each time, which means it's going to cost me more. So every time I query this, it's bringing back everything, and it's costing me money. Whereas if I can get it so it's only bringing back the data that it cares about, because SQL on demand is charged based on throughput, that is going to be cheaper. Now, I don't currently have the diagnostics to see that. All I see is there was a query. It ran, and I'm assuming if I hit refresh, it's gone, because I can only see currently executing queries. So there's a few quirks to get used to. There's a little bit of, I can't lift the lid and see what's going on under the hood. I can't optimize it and make it fancier. But at least what I can do is I can work with reports. I can build new reports. I can save reports. I can deploy them to my Power BI workspace. I can kind of create new data sets, but it's essentially, I can create a template that I download locally to then redeploy, which is a little weird, but still. But it is a lot more integrated than I thought it was. Again, what I would like to see is anything that I've got here listed as a data source. Any of my link services, my storage accounts, data sets that I recommend, like that I've created, and any databases that I have registered in the Metastore. They should kind of, if I'm linking to a workspace, that workspace, I'd like to be able to just go, get data. Where from? One of my many linked Synapse data sources, please. But that's not currently how it works. But either way, it's a hell of a lot more plumbed in than I thought it was. And it is kind of now, it is actually true a first-party part of Synapse. It has the developer baked into the studio. As to how much we'll see people going, oh, actually, I'm going to use that rather than this other web-based browser that has way more functionality, and I just need to open a different web page. How much are people going to use that? How much are people going to see the ease of having it inside a single place compared to the loss of some of the functionality that you get inside the main PowerBI.com service? I don't know. And the other thing, the age-old problem with Power BI is I'm adding all these things in there, but when I hit publish, and when I do the kind of the deploy things inside Synapse, that's not to do with Power BI. So Power BI, once again, is kind of outside of the DevOps story. Now, there's a lot of really, really cool stuff they put into PowerBI.com to do with DevOps, having dev, test, deploy environments, and actually pushing things through that story. That's awesome. But that's not here in Synapse. So it's this kind of just having this real lightweight version. It's like a niche cut of users for whom Power BI.com is like too much. There's too much there. They just want to be able to be given a handful of data sources and create some reports in the same place that they're doing orchestration and Spark. We'll see. I'm interested to see what people think of it and how people have actually sort of used this so far and how people think they're going to use it compared to the PowerBI.com service. But either way, it is plumbed in a lot more than I thought it was. So, good stuff. All right, if you like the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And we'll put some more videos that you might be interested in on the side. Otherwise, we'll catch you next time. And keep those suggestions about more things for us to look into coming. All right, have a good day.